I was dealing with chronic fatigue that I could sleep for 12 hours and still be falling asleep in class. When I was in high school, and I remember one doctor, to fix my digestive symptoms, he put me on a cholesterol medication, not because I had high cholesterol, but because a side effect of the medication would help with my digestion. 95% of hypothyroid cases are caused by Hashimoto's. Most doctors won't test for it, so I just go in like, just assume you got it. Expect that this is gonna be a long journey. Expect that it's going to be 2 steps forward and 1 step back.
Hey, I'm so glad you're here today. We created this podcast for one reason and one reason only: to help you level up and raise your standards in every aspect of your life. Your standards around the food you eat, the people you surround yourself with, and the way you manage stress, and the way you sleep, move, think, and show up in your life. We're living in a time where digestive issues, burnout, and chronic symptoms are exploding, mainly because our lifestyle is out of alignment. We're rushing, we're stressed, we're even eating distracted, and mostly because we're living in this fight or fight instead of a rest and digest. So we built this platform to speak with some of the world's greatest gut experts to bring you the tools, the science, and the perspective you need to level up. So if you're ready to become the strongest, healthiest, and most intentional version of yourself, subscribe, join us, and let's raise the bar together. Without further ado, let's hop into the episode. Hello, everyone. Today's guest is Kat Spangler. She is a functional nutrition practitioner and personal trainer who focuses on helping women heal hypothyroid symptoms, gut issues, fatigue, and stubborn weight gain through sustainable root cause lifestyle changes. Kat's work is so personal, as she's lived through hypothyroidism herself. She's experienced the weight fluctuations, the exhaustion, the gut issues, the frustration of doing everything right and still not feeling like herself. Instead of chasing quick fixes, she actually took a step back and rebuilt her health through daily habits, nutrition, nervous system support, and a much more compassionate approach to healing. What I appreciate about Kat is that she doesn't promise magic. She teaches women how to understand their bodies, work with their hormones and gut, and create change that actually lasts. So her approach blends functional nutrition, fitness mindset, and a real world practicality, not super like extremes or fear-based rules, which I love so much, as it ensures that people are sustainable in their approach to healing. So in this conversation, again, we're going to talk about hypothyroidism, gut health, hormone testing, why medication alone doesn't often serve as the full answer, and what healing actually looks like when you zoom out and address the whole system. So, Kat, thank you so much for being here today. I'm so excited.
Yes, I'm so excited to be here. That was a great intro, by the way. Thank you for that. I so appreciate you. And of course, before I even spoke, my dog barked. So apologies if you hear her in the background.
That is totally fine. The more the merrier. So Kat, I'd love to kick off with just listening to your story, right? I know all the lovely things you do, but I would love to learn a little bit about what got you to this beautiful journey of healing people for a living.
Yeah, man, it was a long one. So I, starting at probably 10 years old, started having these weird symptoms. I think it probably started with the gut. I had, typical hormonal acne as, a preteen teenager, but that just didn't go away. I would get sick all the time, like all the time. And it would take me probably 3 months to fully get better. And then I would be feeling good for a month, and then I would be back to being sick again. So that was really rough. And I was always a good student. I loved school. I was dealing with chronic fatigue that I could sleep for 12 hours and still be falling asleep in class. Like, I remember this so vividly. I think it was in maybe, I don't know, freshman year of high school. And I was in my math class, and I was sitting front and center because I loved school. I was a good student, and I fully fell asleep, like face down on my desk. Now, my teacher was so sweet because she knew that I was a good student and that I was not a slacker. So she literally let me sleep the entire class. And then once everybody left, she kind of woke me up and she's like, "Are you okay?" I was like, no, no, I'm not okay. I'm not okay at all. And yeah, it was multiple years of being kind of shifted from doctor to doctor, specialist to specialist, getting some testing done, but not really the right testing, and just couldn't really find any answers. And I remember this really vividly too. Again, I was in high school, and I remember one doctor, to fix my digestive symptoms, he put me on a cholesterol medication, not because I had high cholesterol, but because a side effect of the medication would help with my digestion. Which, yeah, even as a teenager, I think I took it for like 2 weeks, and I was like, this isn't right. I was like, this cannot be the answer. This is crazy. And I even went to a couple of functional medicine people who, like, they would find little hints, but they never would really like land on the thing. And so basically, I think I must have been, a sophomore in college when I decided to get my health coaching certification. And part of it was because I was interested in pursuing that as a career, but part of it was I was like, I wonder if I can find some answers for myself. And there was one particular module where I remember there was a page where there was a list of all of these different symptoms. And I was like, check, 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 check. It's me, it's me, it's me, it's me. And it was all about gut health. And it was talking more specifically on that one. It was talking about Candida, which is a fungal overgrowth. And so I kind of took that information to a functional medicine doctor that I had in my area. And I was like, hey, like, I think I have Candida. And I took that one step further to be like, I'm pretty sure I have leaky gut. And then luckily he took that one step further, and he was like, yes, you do have Candida. Yes, you do have leaky gut. And also, by the way, you have Hashimoto's. Which at that point, I had no idea what that was. I was like, Hashi, huh? And come to find out that it's an autoimmune disease where your body attacks your thyroid. I remember I was in the parking lot of I think it was called Mother's Market. And I almost cried because I was scared. I was like, autoimmune disease, like, that sounds really scary. Like, am I going to die? Am I ever going to feel better? And luckily, because I was in health coaching school, there were a couple of specialists who talked about hypothyroidism, who talked about Hashimoto's, who talked about gut health. That kind of made me realize that there was a path forward for me. And I've basically spent the last decade kind of going through and doing a lot of different, like, it's been a very slow process of peeling back the different layers of healing, because it took so long to get the right diagnosis that there were a lot of kind of underlying issues. But now I'm happy to say, like, I've been living symptom-free for a few years now. Things are great. So for anybody who is in the thick of it, you can get to the other side with the right answers.
Wow, that's so fascinating. I mean, super inspiring. But yeah, I would just like to still peel the onion a little further. When you were that 11-year old and you were a bit lost, starting to feel these different problems like acne, and through the years from there all the way to sophomore year of college, having these bouts of just chronic fatigue. During that time, if you were to go back to this to younger Kat, what would be like the steps and the groundwork habits that you would try to instill within Kat to slowly streamline her path towards healing?
Oh man, that's such a good question. There's certain things that I would recommend to her that would be a matter of finding the right support, finding the right people, which I know I was trying to do, but I didn't quite know how to do it. And I don't think there were quite as many people that I needed back then. So finding the people who could order the right tests, who would take more time with me to really understand my case and kind of play health detective. I think having the right professionals in your corner to give you answers is obviously the ideal. But take away that as an option, right? Whether you can't find it, or, it's not in your area, or what have you, or it's not available to you. I definitely back then struggled with my relationship with food quite a bit. So I would eat really healthy during the day, but at night I would like binge on sugar. I would go into the pantry and get all the different cookies and crackers and snacks and just kind of lay it out on my bed and binge on that. And that obviously was exacerbating all of the kind of root cause issues that I had. So all that sugar was feeding the fungus and the bacteria and all the things. And I was loaded up on gluten and dairy, which obviously I had no idea at the time that I had Hashimoto's, but those are very big triggers. So I think if I could have had the awareness to, because back then it was anything around diet and food was about being skinny and was about restriction. And that's what led to the binging. So if I could make that mindset shift of you are eating to feel better, to fuel your body. I was a dancer at the time, like to understand that connection that food is not skinny, food is fuel. I think would have really helped me not make the decisions that I was making that were really intensifying the issues that I was experiencing.
Wow. I mean, like now, moving forward, if someone is recovering from Hashimoto's and from gut issues, what are some quick tips you would prescribe to them to, like, optimize their diet? Just some groundwork principles that we should abide by.
Yes. I always start with gluten and dairy because it is the biggest needle mover of pretty much anything that you can do on the nutrition side. And the reason for that is, and by the way, I always want to make sure that people understand, because I know there's a lot of hypothyroid women who are listening who are like, well, I don't think I have Hashimoto's, or I don't know if I have Hashimoto's. 95% of hypothyroid cases are caused by Hashimoto's. Most doctors won't test for it. So I just go in like, just assume you got it. So with Hashimoto's, your body is producing antibodies that are attacking your thyroid gland. Your body's viewing your thyroid gland as a foreign invader and is mounting an attack against it. So with gluten and dairy, the molecules look very, very similar to your to your thyroid tissue. So your body's viewing that as, oh, there's more of this foreign invader. We need a bigger army to mount that attack even more. And so when we have those antibodies rising, your thyroid gets caught in the crossfires and gets even more inflamed, gets even more damaged, makes it harder for you to produce that thyroid hormone. Mm-hmm. So just by removing the gluten and dairy, it can make a really big difference in bringing those antibodies down. There are some gluten cross reactors that kind of behave similarly, but that gets into a little bit more in-depth elimination diets that's looking at potatoes and coffee and oats and corn and soy and things like that. But I would say, like, start with gluten and dairy. And then the other thing that I would say, and this is the number one piece of advice I would give to anyone, hypothyroid, Hashimoto's or not, we all need to be eating more whole foods, less processed junk, and more plants. Mm-hmm. If you did that and the gluten and dairy free thing, like, that's going to get you really far in feeling better.
Wow. And during that time when you did decide to make the ultimate switch and cut out gluten and dairy, did you feel like there was a dip in, like, the quality of your life when, of course that does limit your food options. And of course, beforehand in those times of binge eating, that definitely, like, was something that might have became like a household habit. And like now you're just eradicating that from your daily routine.
Yeah, so I will say, and maybe I'm an oddball in this, but also maybe not. I've definitely had a number of clients who have experienced this too. The binging stopped being even a temptation when I started to actually understand how foods affected my body. So when it started to be about eating for health and not for a certain weight, I just kind of stopped struggling with the binging for the most part. Like, every once in a while, I might get a little bit of that pull, but by and large, like, it wasn't even a temptation. When I made that shift. I just lost my train of thought of where I was going after that. Remind me the question.
The question was, how was it, like, when you did cut out dairy and sugar? Was there any, like, how was it that by any chance did it affect, like, quality of life overall?
Yeah. So when I did my first elimination diet to really see how different foods were affecting my body, that part was tough because mm-hmm. it was more extreme. Mm-hmm. Because it wasn't just eliminating gluten and dairy. It was all grains. It was sugar. It was even high sugar fruits. It was fermented foods. Like, the list was quite long. So that was tough, but I just had it in my head. I was like, you just got to do this for a few months. And so that the short-term aspect of that really helped, because I was just like, just every time I struggled with it, I'm like, this 3 months is going to pass in no time, and you're going to be so pissed at yourself at the end of it if you cheat and you're like, oh, but what could have been if I had just stuck with it? So that was kind of my mentality to get me through the initial phase. And then when I did, because when you do an elimination diet to see how foods affect you, you do a slow reintroduction to see how the foods affect you. And when I would add back in gluten and all of a sudden I'm super fatigued again, or I add back in dairy and all of a sudden I have a huge breakout on my face and my chest and my back, the temptation for those foods went away. So there was definitely an adjustment period of having to learn and find the brands that I liked and having to, obviously ask the questions at the restaurants and that sort of thing. But really, it didn't take long because, right, honestly, we're so lucky to live in the time we do because we have so many options. Restaurants are very well versed in dealing with people with food sensitivities. So it's not that hard once you just make that mental commitment of this is life now. This is the new norm.
What's the best thing is that what I've found is whenever a path is legit, like a healing path is legit, it's always kind of the same thing, that there is commitment, there is hard work to do. And it's like, it's your self-love, it's kind of your discipline that's going to lead you to have amazing, long-lasting health benefits. That's just a common variable I see in every single conversation I have, which it just gives me peace of mind because it improves my discretion in seeing, okay, is this a scam? Is this true? Is this really going to help someone? So it's just, that's super interesting. My follow-up there, Kat, is when you are talking to people with these issues, how do you develop your discretion in understanding which foods to eliminate? Because from what I'm learning from you, it's only the foods that kind of look similar to those of the thyroid that will get attacked, and that could exacerbate the overall complications. So what are how can we is it tests, or is it like a certain intake form, or like certain questions we ask them? How does that look?
Yeah, also great question. Because I get a lot of people who ask questions about food sensitivities, because that is something else to be mindful of. Is there are the foods that drive up antibodies, whether you're sensitive or not, and then there are just food sensitivities that you have that are causing damage to your gut lining, which is causing basically food and toxins to escape into the bloodstream where they're not supposed to be, which then also kind of aggravates the army. And it's like, oh, there's more bad guys, right? So there are those kind of two routes of how your body can negatively react to foods, that it's going to negatively impact your inflammation and your thyroid and whatnot. So with an elimination diet, that's going to be the most effective, because I get a lot of questions about the food sensitivity tests. And the fact is, number one, they're the science just isn't quite there yet. They're not very accurate. Because what often happens, so a lot of times the tests are going to be an IgG test, which your IgG is basically an immune marker. And first of all, there's 4 different IgGs and it often only tests one. So that's problem number one. The other problem is you have to have eaten the food recently for there to be a sort of immune memory of that food. And then problem number 3 is if you have, like I said, leaky gut, you are always going to show up as having food sensitivities to the foods you eat often, because those food particles are constantly escaping into your bloodstream, again, where they're not supposed to be. And so now your body has created antibodies for them. Doesn't mean you have an innate sensitivity to it. It's just your gut is leaky. And so you're eating a lot of those foods. And so your body is attacking those foods. So it can create a lot of food fear where it's not necessary. And it can cause you to eliminate foods when it's just not necessary, which could potentially limit your nutrient intake and that sort of thing. There's an MRT food sensitivity test that is a little better, but it is significantly more expensive. So it's, I think, $400. And what that is doing is it's looking at your live in the moment, your white blood cell response to foods. So your white blood cells can basically eject hundreds of different mediators when it encounters a food it doesn't like. And so an MRT test is going to look at, is there any kind of negative response of that white blood cell? And that means that your body doesn't like it so much. But again, I would say that it's going to create a lot of food fear. It's not necessary. If you do the healing work to get your gut to a good place, that's going to fix a lot of those food sensitivities. So my recommendation is usually doing an elimination diet. We usually will eliminate a lot of those gluten dairy cross reactors. And then sometimes, depending on the case, we might, like if they've already done something like that, maybe they've already eliminated gluten and dairy, they've tried different diets, nothing has worked, then we'll start to look at things like nightshades. Then we'll start to look at things like some of the top food sensitivities like eggs. Sometimes we'll do legumes and kind of see, it just depends. I try to avoid that as much as possible. I want to keep as many foods in your diet as we can. But if you're just one of those stubborn cases that it's like we're missing something, then we got to kind of go deeper.
That makes perfect sense. What's the timeline on that? Like if there is a food that you're kind of doing a trial for and trying to see how it reacts with a client's body, how much time do you give to understand, okay, is this good for me, or this might be something that we want to eliminate?
Yeah, you have to eliminate it for a minimum of 27 days. I usually round it out to an even 30. With that said, sometimes you need a little bit more time. So if you really want to be like absolutely positive, like a 90-day elimination is phenomenal. Some people just mentally, they can't get to that 90 days and they're like, I got 30 in me and that's it. And I'm like, okay. So it's by the individual, but 27 days is the minimum for us to basically, in that 27 days, what's happening is we're calming the immune system down. We're taking away all of the quote unquote bad guys. So the army is like, okay, we can go home, so that when we reintroduce the food, we can actually see how our body is responding to it, because our immune system isn't kind of keeping it at bay. So a lot of times people be like, well, I eat dairy every day and I feel fine. Meanwhile, they're tired and they have digestive issues and whatnot, but like they don't notice a difference from day to day. And it takes eliminating the food and then reintroducing it back to really actually see how it's impacting you. And they'll do that, and then they'll have dairy and they're like, oh my God, I had like horrible digestion the next day. Or, oh my God, I got so bloated when I had gluten. So we do need that time to kind of clear the antibodies.
Got it. And if I were to condense the full healing journey of someone with Hashimoto's or with like a bunch of gut issues, I realize there are phases to it, right? Like one might just be like a recovery phase where they're just trying to clean up shop, trying to, cut out the bad stuff, keep the good stuff. But from there, I know there's probably going to be some tweaks that'll be done to strengthen our gut's resilience to be able, because I'm trying to think the habits that you needed to imbibe in the beginning, right? Like right after a sophomore year of college, they're probably a little different now for you, right? Like you probably have different eating habits altogether. So how do we roadmap that for each person, each client?
Yeah, so there is a sort of step-by-step phased out protocol that I put pretty much everyone through. And I think the like if you're someone listening and you're like, I have changed my diet, I've tried all the things and I'm still not feeling better, you probably skipped step one. Because most people do. And step one is regulating your central nervous system. It is getting your body out of fight or flight and into rest and digest. Most of us exist in a place of chronic stress, whether we realize it or not. And by the way, like if you think that you're someone, you're like, I deal with stress really well, like my life is busy, but I got it handled. You might, your brain might, your personality might bode really well with that. Your body does not care. Your body feels all of that stress day in and day out. And when you're constantly stressed and that cortisol is constantly high, cortisol is catabolic, meaning it breaks down our body's tissue to create energy for us. And so what happens there is that is going to inhibit healing. Like you can do all of the diet changes that you want, but if you constantly have that breakdown happening, it's like you are slamming on the brakes when you're trying to get your car to go. So I usually will spend at least a month with my clients working on their stress management, working on their sleep, slowing them down a little bit, working on some of those foundational habits that are just really nurturing and supportive before we get into some of the more intense kind of healing protocols. And then with that, I always start with the gut, because everything has to start with the gut. It affects everything else. So we have to start there. Then I work on our liver. We need to make sure that our detox pathways need to be very clear, because what happens is when we have this sort of overloaded, overburdened liver, it's not able to clear out old hormones well. And then that can create its own sort of cascade effect of hormonal imbalance. And then, like, say you have constipation, which a lot of hypothyroid women do, because hypothyroid, everything slows down. Even if your liver is doing the job, and then you're not expelling those old hormones through your stool, then they can again get reabsorbed. So we need the liver and the gut working beautifully before we even look at hormones. And then that's kind of where I go into the more optimization of the hormones after we do those two things. The other reason that we focus so much on the gut and the liver, 80% of thyroid hormone conversion happens in the liver, 20% happens in the gut. So the vast majority of hypothyroid women are on things like levothyroxine and synthroid. Those are T4 hormones, which are inactive. So you need your liver and your gut to turn those hormones on so your cells can actually use them. And many people are very bad at converting their thyroid medication, which is why you can be on medication and still feel like crap, which was my story for years. So that's kind of the trajectory that we take, is central nervous system, gut, liver, hormones, and then any kind of optimization, maintenance tweaks we need to do at the end.
If we can do a quick side question for that, because I would love to just understand the science a little better on the relationship between our gut and our hormones. I do know our gut is responsible for creating key nutrients that help us produce hormones, correct?
For sure. Absolutely. We need a lot of different nutrients. We need selenium, we need zinc, we need iodine, we need B vitamins for our thyroid specifically to function. So if you are not absorbing those things well, then your thyroid is going to be struggling. The other thing that we have to understand is your gut microbiome. So first of all, this is just like fun fact. You have more gut bacterial cells in your body than human cells. So we are more bacteria than human, which is kind of wild. And that balance of good and bad bacteria is going to have a huge impact on your health overall, because what happens is the good bacteria are going to produce something called short chain fatty acids, which are they're like a cure-all in the body. They help with so many things. They help lower inflammation. They help your body run smoothly. On the flip side, when you have bad bacteria, when you have pathogenic bacteria, they're going to produce lipopolysaccharides, and they kind of do the opposite. They drive up inflammation. They make weight loss harder. They make it harder for your body to do its jobs well. So we want to make sure that that balance of good and bad bacteria is there to again, make sure that it's not another sort of hindrance to healing. And then there's also a whole other element of there are bacteria in your gut that are responsible for detoxifying estrogen. And like I said, if your gut isn't working well and you're not expelling things, then that's going to create a whole backup of issues. So there's so many elements of how your gut impacts your hormones and everything around them.
Got it. And is there a black and white rule as to what foods feed the pathogenic bacteria and what foods feed the beneficial bacteria?
That's a little bit more nuanced. So you want to be able to say that by and large, eating things like sugar and processed foods and gluten and dairy and things like that tend to feed the pathogens. The more beneficial foods, or the more, stereotypically healthy foods, lots of fiber, lots of plants are really good for the good bacteria. But there is some nuance in there. So for example, a lot of times because hypothyroid women's digestion tends to be slow, food tends to sit in the GI tract too long, and so it feeds bacteria and can cause something called SIBO, which is small intestine bacterial overgrowth. And those bacteria actually feed on fermentable carbs that are found in some really healthy foods. So things like cruciferous vegetables, so broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, things like apples and pears. So if you notice that you're someone where you feel like you eat really healthy, but you get super, super bloated after having a lot of vegetables or after having certain, fruits and that sort of thing, you very well may have something like SIBO that's actually at play, that you may need to temporarily eliminate those foods while you work to eradicate that particular bacteria before you can bring those foods back in a healthy way.
Got it. Kat, I'm just going to take I'm just going to grab a tissue. I don't know why my nose is running.
You're fine.
Give me one second. So sorry. I'm actually in the guest room of my folks. Because,
nice.
Yeah.
I used to run a podcast, so I've been there.
I would actually love to learn about that as well.
Yes.
But so Kat, I actually wanted to go 2 steps back when we were actually talking about the nervous system regulation. What are the certain tools and techniques we are sharing with our clients to help them get from this flight or fight state you're saying to this I believe, rest and digest state.
Yeah, there's a few. I mean, there's a lot of things you can do, but there's a few of my personal favorites that I share with a lot of people. So, one of the fastest ways to communicate to your body that it's safe is through your breath. So, if you think about it, your body does not know the difference between different types of stressors. So, your body is just going to associate any kind of stress as like, there's a bear chasing me, even if it's just that you're stuck at a red light. So, when we slow down our breathing, it's a way of letting our body know, like, hey, I'm not being chased by a wild animal. So, and a lot of us kind of exist in this state of like short, shallow breaths, again, without even realizing it. So, one of the best, most effective breathing techniques for getting your body into the parasympathetic nervous system instead of the sympathetic nervous system, which is what we want, is, and you probably have heard Huberman talk about this if you've listened to that guy, but it is the physiological sigh. And so basically, you're going to take a long inhale through your nose, take a little extra gulp of air at the top through your nose, and then long, slow exhale through your mouth. Any breathing technique you do, you want to make sure that the exhale is at least twice as long as the inhale, because on that exhale, that slows down your heart rate, and that's what really helps your body get into that relaxed state. So the breathing in and of itself is good, but what I like to do is have people habit stack it on their meals. So basically, before each meal, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, I have them do this breathing technique for 1 to 2 minutes, and it's kind of a double whammy because number one, it's making sure that 3 times a day you are slowing yourself down and getting into this relaxed state, but it's also actually going to help you digest that meal. Because what happens is when we're in that fight or flight, blood flow gets diverted to the limbs, getting literally prepared to fight or to run away. Versus when we're in that rest and digest state, as the name suggests, the blood flow comes inward towards our digestive system, so we're able to digest our food more easily. And I also just find that it slows you down, which allows you to really pay attention to your hunger and your fullness cues a little bit more easily. It gets you a little bit more connected to your meal and your body signals and things like that. So it's just a really beautiful practice overall. The other 2 favorites of mine are, number one, super simple, taking a walk. It is one of the most effective things that you can do for getting your body into a relaxed state. Get away from the screens, get away from the noise, and just even if it's just 10 minutes outside. They actually found, so there's a therapeutic practice called EMDR, which is really like incredible trauma therapy. And it was discovered by this scientist woman who was like walking through the woods and realized that her eyes were they naturally go back and forth when we walk. And that mimics the REM sleep cycle, which is when we process and sort of file away our experiences and our emotions. So when we mimic that, when we walk, it helps us to process the emotions of the day.
Wow.
And then the last one that is, it's really good. Just if you've had a long day, you've had a stressful day, you know that your body's in that state. Maybe you can't get outside for a walk. It's cold. It's whatever. This is a little, I kind of combine some things. So I will lay on my bed with my legs up the wall because that helps kind of clear cortisol. I will do a self-hug. So my right hand will go under my left rib cage. My left hand will go on my right shoulder, and I'll give myself a squeeze for 10 minutes. And I'll just turn some of my favorite music on and I'll hum. And so the self-hug, that pressure around your body is going to signal safety to the body. And then that hum, that vibration is going to activate your vagus nerve, which is the nerve that connects your brain to your gut. And it's really good for, again, signaling safety to the body. Also really good for the gut and for anxiety and things like that. So lots of powerful tools to pick from.
Wow, that's cool. I'm gonna try that one, the hum. It's so funny. Actually, during like the December of last year, I unfortunately got a little sick. I think it was just a seasonal flu, and that's one thing my mom told me. She's like, start humming. It's gonna help your throat get better. And
I like that.
I slowly started hearing about humming, but I never knew it has like real healing benefits.
Yeah.
It's crazy how interesting, like we can kind of change, we can like imbibe certain actions and they can help us. It's pretty cool. But yeah, walking, I always knew that's actually something my grandma's super big on. After eating, that's her biggest thing. Like after dinner, we have like a family walk. Like she just started that as like a ritual.
That's so good. Also great for blood sugar regulation, by the way. Like 10 minutes of walking after a meal, really good for stabilizing your blood sugar.
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah, I mean, her skin is always like super radiant, and she's actually one of those who she knows just like a bunch of like Eastern ancient healing techniques, and so I just constantly learn from her. Like I remember the other day, yesterday, I was gonna go to bed, and I just walked past the living room, and she was just like just pressing like acupressure points. She just knows stuff. So I just keep trying to
have a podcast.
Yeah, she should. He has. So it's funny. She actually has a. She started this. You can say like audiobook, and she has like 40 chapters. It's called Dreams and Reality, and she basically made a beautiful story because daily, like she loves like watching soap operas and like shows, and so she saw so many during the pandemic. She's like, I think I can write my own. And so she just kind of like went and just started writing scripts, and me and my brother were like, let's just record it. Let's put it on YouTube. And so like now it's just like something that like gives her like some excitement throughout the day. Like she
I
writes a
love it.
bit of her script, and it's like a great like she adds some elements of her own life, but then also something that maybe she's imagined or she's seen in a movie. So it's
That's so
amazing. So
cute. That's incredible. I'm
yeah,
obsessed.
yeah, I know it is really cool. I'm sorry. Small tangent there. Quick question. Last question about food, Kat. One thing that I hear a lot is this idea of just intermittent fasting or just like fasting for days to heal our gut. I was wondering, what is your take on like the 3 meals per day, the fasting, and overall, does fasting have a place in optimal healing?
Yeah. Oh man. My answer is a little spicy because I kind of go against the grain a little bit on this one. So most of the research done on fasting has been done on men. And men's bodies work very different than women's bodies. Our bodies are much more hormonally sensitive. I'm not saying that it doesn't have a place, and I will share kind of where it does. But by and large, like the women who come to me, their nervous system is super dysregulated. They have a lot of healing work to do. They have a lot of imbalance in their bodies and in their lives. And we need to make sure that you're, like I said, first step, that your cortisol is not sabotaging you. And skipping meals is going to drive up cortisol, particularly skipping breakfast. So what happens is cortisol is the hormone that wakes us up in the morning. So it's not all bad. We need some cortisol. And it is the highest when we wake up. Now, when we skip a meal, that's going to drive cortisol up even more because how do we get our energy? Our body has to break down our muscle tissue to release glucose from the muscle to give us energy to go about our day. Then add in the fact that most people will have coffee instead of their breakfast. And now we're driving up that cortisol even more because of the caffeine. So now we are starting our day in this really dysregulated state. And just interesting, not fun fact, but fact is when we have high cortisol, that actually suppresses your thyroid. Because again, cortisol is that stress hormone. And when we're stressed out, our body is not prioritizing hormones. It's not prioritizing reproduction. It's not prioritizing digestion because it's like we don't want to have a baby when we're running from a lion. We don't want to have to go to the bathroom when we're running for our lives. We don't want to have a fast metabolism if there is a famine going on, which is another type of stressor that our body is perceiving. So you're creating this this kind of, again, cascade effect that's setting you up to feel worse.
Mm.
Now, this is where the nuance kind of comes in. So if you are early on in your journey, you have a lot of symptoms going on, that is not where I would recommend intermittent fasting.
Okay.
On the other hand, like I myself, I've been working on my healing, like I said, for 2 decades. And I literally just started playing with a little bit of intermittent fasting, but I have a lot of rules for myself. So number one, I checked in with myself before I did it. And I was like, I am never using intermittent fasting as a way to punish myself, to try to lose weight, to try to, mitigate calories. Like that is not the purpose. If it was, I wouldn't do it. Number two is I will only do one 16-hour fast per week. Every other day, I'm making sure that I'm eating my breakfast, lunch, and dinner, eating within 30 minutes to an hour of waking. And I'm going to experiment with doing one 24-hour fast once a month, but only during my follicular phase, which in phases of the cycle, that's basically the first week or so after your period, because that is when your body is strongest and most resilient. You have energy of the ability to do it. Like I do not recommend fasting during your luteal phase. So that's the week before your period when you're feeling tired, when you're feeling lethargic, when your body is struggling a little bit, you might have a harder time in your workouts. And then the last piece is do not push through. pay attention to your body. If your workouts start to suffer, if your sleep starts to suffer, if you get really bad fatigue, if you find that you're having like major cravings and all of that after the fact, if your digestion starts to get messed up, like those are all signs that your body is not ready for it. And make sure that you like allow yourself to adjust. So for example, last week I started to do my 16-hour fast for the week. I stopped at about, I think, 14 or 15 hours because like I was starting to feel shaky. I was starting to not feel my best. I'm like, nope, we're done with that. So a lot of nuance there.
Love it. But bottom line, listen to your body. That's like the key. That's like what tells you keep going or all right, time to make a switch.
Correct.
Understood. I had one question as well. When you are developing this regimen, what place does supplements take, if it even does?
Yeah, no, it absolutely does. Supplements can be a powerful helper, but they are a helper. So I always like to say, if you kind of think about habits as like a pyramid, and you have your base habits of like the eating the more whole foods and more plants and things like that, making sure you're getting enough protein. I'm sure we're all sick of hearing that at this point. And then you work your way up the pyramid, and kind of at the top of the pyramid is supplements. And you want to make sure that those supplements are high quality, which I know sometimes can get expensive. So I'm always like, prioritize the foundational pieces. I use supplements more so as a mode for healing than like a long-term solution, if that makes sense. So I'll do a lot of like testing with my clients. And so let's say they come back and if we find out that they have H. pylori, it's a bacterial overgrowth in their stomach. You're not going to be able to fix that just with your food. Like we're going to have to put you on a supplement regimen to kill off that bacteria, to help rebuild the gut lining. So there's some really beautiful supplements out there that I like quite a bit, but I don't want people to go in thinking that that's the panacea or that that's the solution to like, oh, I don't have to worry about my diet because I'm taking the right supplements.
Gotcha. Kat, thank you so much. I learned so much from you, whether it comes from diet, the nervous system management, and also the mindset around supplements. I think like key takeaway was one, you have to listen to your body. And two, it's always like for a streamlined course of action towards healing, it's always best to consult an expert like you to learn exactly what can be the root causes of our gut issues, whether that's hypothyroidism, whether it's constipation, SIBO, and most of all, for that healing journey, it's really just hard work that you have to take. It's some dedication where you have to make a commitment to yourself to sticking cutting certain foods out, and actively consistently practicing the nervous system regulation habits that you share. So yeah, thank you so much, Kat. I learned a lot. I got a full page of notes. Super excited. Kat, where can people find you, and where can people hopefully work with you?
Yeah, so you can find me. I'm on Instagram at Follow Your Gut Nutrition with periods between the words, or on TikTok at Follow Your Gut Nutrition, no periods. And I post on there quite often. There's a lot of free information there. If you go to the link in either of those bios, you can download my free hypothyroid weight loss guide, which will kind of go over a lot of things that we talked about today and how it's related to your weight and to get that scale moving again. As far as working with me, I strongly recommend booking just a consultation. I have a number of different options. So you can go to katspangler.com is my website, katspangler.com/consultation. And just high level, I have kind of bottom up. So I have my club membership. If you want something that is, you can get access to my protocols, my recipes, you can ask me questions on our community message board. And that's obviously going to be a lower fee than working with me one-on-one. So that's a really great community to be a part of. I have my Hypothyroid Healing Collective, which is a 6-month container where you do get some labs included in that. We're going to look at your gut health. We're going to look at your hormones. You're going to get a customized protocol created for you. And it's very much geared towards hypothyroid Hashimoto's women who are looking to live symptom-free. Or if you want to do the one-on-one, so Sorry, and I should say with that, you get a few one-on-one calls, but then you get access to office hours each week if you want to hop on and ask some questions. Or the high-level one-on-one is where I'm going to be talking to you either every week or every other week. I'll create a personalized protocol for you based off of either lab testing or some intake forms, depending on what we decide is the best fit for you. That's really good for the more complex cases and for people who just need a higher level of accountability and handholding. So I have a lot of different options for you depending on your price point, depending on your goals, depending on what you're struggling with. To clarify, I do work with people via Zoom and phone calls, so you don't have to be in the area. I do offer personal training if you want to do that on Zoom or in Dallas. Those are options as well. So lots of different ways to work with me. But like I said, easiest thing to do is just for us to have a conversation. So katspangler.com/consultation.
Love it. Love it. Kat, as we wrap up, if there's one message you'd like to give to one of our viewers who might be struggling with severe gut issues, what would that be?
Oh man, I would say expect, and this is going to be a little bit of a hard pill to swallow, but it's what I see people struggle with the most. Expect that this is going to be a long journey. Expect that it's going to be 2 steps forward and 1 step back. Expect that you're probably going to have to work with multiple practitioners. There's going to be moments where you feel great. There's going to be moments where you backslide. Like, you have to be fully ready to engage in this over the long term. This is not a matter of 3 months and you're done. Like, I've had some people who have seen major progress in just 2 weeks of working together. I'm not saying that fast results can't happen, but by and large, hypothyroidism is a complex condition and it requires complex healing, and it just takes time. So be patient, be consistent, keep showing up. You will get there, and God, I promise it's so worth it.
Oh my God. Awesome, awesome, awesome message, Kat. Kat, thank you so much for all your time. I'm so excited to see the countless lives you continue to heal. So thank you so much for your time. And I'm really hopeful we have another conversation down the line, maybe 1 to 2 years later, so I can hear even more about the amazing success you're having.
Thank you so much for having me. This was so much fun.
All right.